2020. My name is Mishi Lee, and our next session will be on the Designing Tomorrow's Travel Experience. Please join me in welcoming our speakers, Paul Priestman, designer, co-founder, and chairman of PriestmanGoode. Arnaud Champenois, Senior Vice President, Brand and Marketing of Belmond. Lars Herold, co-founder and CEO of Dromos Technologies AG. And last but not least, please welcome our moderator, Andrew Mead, Chief Architect of MTR Corporation Limited. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that warm introduction. Welcome, Paul, Arnaud, and Lars. I can't see you, but I'm sure you're there in the background. Today's session is on safe travels, and I think it's really interesting at the end of an unprecedented year that's affected the transportation industry, how designers respond to this, and how do we make travel safe for the future. Fortunately, I've got three terrific experts here with me today to help me answer that question, so I'm not alone as I feel on this stage right now. Paul Priestman is going to be our first speaker, and Paul is a very good friend of mine. He's the founder and chairman of PriestmanGoode, a multi-award-winning design company that has designed everything from planes, trains, spaceships, and a whole host of products that you use every day that you may not know that his company is behind. And he's a particular insightful thinker behind the whole of design industry and design for people and how we respond to a people-centric environment. So please, without further ado, can I introduce Paul, and if he can give us his presentation, please.
I'm Paul Priestman. I'm a designer. I am also the chairman of a design company called PriestmanGoode. PriestmanGoode is a design company based in central London, and we specialise in transportation design, and we also specialise in future thinking, which is probably one of the areas that we're best known for. PriestmanGoode works predominantly in the transportation industry, in aviation, in rail, even space travel. And I think clarity means sort of making people feel safe and secure in travel, and that happens from the moment you book your flight or journey from home. So it's digital, and it's the whole customer experience, the whole passenger journey throughout that, of sort of constant reassurance that things are safe and you're being looked after. So that's one of the big challenges at the moment. One of the areas we've been looking at is using materials, lighting, and design to make an environment easy to clean and obvious that it's been cleaned to the customer or the traveller. And that's the constant reassurance that people now need. Remembering yesterday when you're thinking about the future is important. In many forms of transport, we design some of the fastest trains in the world, and there is a real romanticism about travelling by rail. And that's something that we can actually bring out in design. You know, people love looking out of the window of a train, going from the city centre to a city centre. So those reference points are very important, but also the fact that people need this reassurance as they're travelling, and knowing that the system works correctly. Designing transportation is really interesting, particularly in trains. It's this sense of place and culture. Here in London, we're able to have fabric seats on the tube trains. And then many cities that we work for will say, how can you do that in this city? You know, we have to have more substantial materials because they'd be vandalized. And that's very interesting, because that is a cultural difference. But also I think through design, if you design something which is well designed, well detailed, friendly even, then people will treat it with respect, rather than it being hard surfaces and you can treat it badly. In China, we're designing hot water dispensers in the vestibules where you get on and off the trains. And then in New Zealand, we're designing surfboard racks, rather than bicycle racks as we would be doing in London or in Hong Kong. Yeah, those aspects are very important in the culture. But also, when you're designing trains for big cities and countries, they are actually a symbol of that country. You know, if you imagine, envisage Japan, then you think of the Shinkansen in front of Mount Fuji, and they become a symbol of that country. And that's a really interesting area of design, is that cultural understanding. And cities are beginning to understand that the form of transport and the design of the transport system is one of the appeals to travel to that city. So you go to Hong Kong, you go on the Star Ferry, of course. You go to London, you go on the new tube for London. So it's designing something which is sort of the embodiment of that city and an interesting experience. Well, London is one of the great centres of creativity in the world. And look at the street scene, you look at the music, the theatres, the restaurants, and many young designers really love to be in London, as it's an educational centre for design, obviously, with great institutions like the Royal College of Art and Central St Martin's. We are always drawing on young talent from all over the world. It's completely international, and London has that appeal. And that's why we have an office right in the middle of central London, here in Great Portland Street. Young designers and people, they want something more than just employment. The whole old employment role has changed, and we're trying to think ahead, as creative companies need to think ahead, and try and preempt that to make sure that the best designers that we can employ stay with us and learn and grow. Because we work in so many areas, in so many parts of the world, we have to have a very open-minded approach to everything. Being a great designer and a great design firm, you have to always put yourself in the place of the person you're designing for. And I can show a design that we've done, and they say, well, I don't like that. And I say, well, it's not for you. It's not designed for you. It's not designed for your culture. So I think it's very important, if we're designing a product or a service which is more aimed at women rather than men, then it's very important to have a different mix of people working on those projects. PriestmanGoode is renowned for its self-initiated future thinking, and it's something that we do a lot of, and it's something that we've always reinvested in. So it's enabling us to look forward into areas where a client would not normally commission us to look at. But it allows us to sort of leapfrog what's happening at the moment. And what we find is that then people are coming to us and asking us to look at a particular area that we have already studied. And that allows us to really think about the future in depth without the time pressures. And then we launch them, and of course the result of that is that people are interested in what we do, and then that results in more commissions. What's fantastic about the creative industries is the constant invention of new ideas and new thinking. I'm always amazed at the ingenuity of some of the ideas and thoughts that have come about. And even just looking at the most basic of things, and trying to solve a problem, because design is not just about making something look beautiful, it's about solving problems and making something better. Traveling is something that I do a lot of, not so much this year, and I really miss Hong Kong, I really do. I think the wastage of time in travel, the sort of the barriers that stop you on your journey are always a frustration, and that's something that we've tried to do in the design of airports and thinking about the passenger journey to make it as seamless as possible. And if you imagine your journey through an airport, you're stopped at the door, you're stopped at ticketing, you're stopped at security, everyone's trying to stop you on your way, when really they should be helping you on your way. One of the projects I'm personally involved in at the moment is looking at wheelchair accessibility onto aeroplanes. And this picks up on a project we did way back in 2012 for the London Paralympics. It's a very important issue. When we design a train, there's always space for wheelchairs and buses. On an aeroplane, there's very little thinking about that, which needs to be corrected. So that's one of our things we're championing and pushing forward to think about the future. But again, this is a project which we wouldn't really normally be commissioned for. What's happened in 2020 is that I think the world's been bombarded with too much information, quite a lot of negativity, and I don't think the human brain works very well when it's overloaded. And I think we need to step back a little bit and really think positively. It's not insurmountable. Nothing's insurmountable. And I think creativity and creative thinking has a place in all industries. You think about the people working in medicine with their amazing advancements, and that is creativity. They're just in a different area. If you look at what's happening, you can see that imagination and dreaming is really what we need to do more of. Disappointment and failure is a very important part of the creative process. I find it very interesting, you can speak to a young designer and they say, I've got this great idea, and they're very protective about it, thinking, I don't want to show anyone because I don't want it to be criticised, when really what you need to do is show it to the most critical person you can find. And that's something that we have to go through. You say, we've got this great idea, so who's going to be the most critical? And show it to them, because if you don't do it right early on, it's going to happen later. And I think that's a realism that designers need to have. It's hard, and no one likes to take criticism of their own sort of design babies, but you have to do it. Creating something that makes life better for people, I think, is the ultimate aim. It ticks the boxes in environment, accessibility, thinking about all demographics. Everybody is creative. If you look at a young child, they're an artist. If you ask them to design a train, they'll design one straight away. Or sing a song, they'll sing a song. So everyone, at some reason, it sort of, I don't know what happens during the education process and as they're growing up, but that sort of seems to stop. So I think that needs to be somehow kept in people's characters, because I think creativity is very important to everyone. During the COVID lockdown, I did come into the office, and all the designers have their screens, and there was no one in the building, but all the screens had the work that people was working on, spinning models, and they're all working remotely, but I could see all of their models moving and the mouse moving, but they weren't there. And I felt like I was some sort of avatar or something, visited from another planet, but it just showed how we can adapt so quickly. And even to the point where contracts and new business has really come through much more quickly than it would have done previously. I mean, the character of a city is so important. So I think preserving the old buildings and structures is important. But I think as important is developing a modern design and architectural style which reflects the culture. I am quite interested in how the future of cities will function, and public transport, because at the moment many cities are congested by cars and trucks and vans. So how can we solve the public transport system? There's a lot of thinking going on in this area, and how the individual vehicles will change. And one of the projects we're working on is Dromos. And this is a sort of a hybrid of individual transport that then links together and becomes mass transit. And I think this is a really interesting area and a very exciting development in the future of cities. One of the really exciting projects that PriestmanGoode has been working on is Space Perspective. And this is actually designing a spaceship, and what a fantastic project to design a spaceship. This technology is to use a balloon to lift a spaceship from the ground zero right up to near atmosphere, and initially to allow people to study the Earth from high altitude. I think space travel might actually happen sooner than we expect. I did a little bit of research actually, it's quite interesting. I looked at, say, go back 200 years, how long did it take a European to get to California? And it was probably about a year, because they had ships and horses. And the life expectancy was quite small at that time. So to spend a year on a spaceship going to another planet may not be such an incredible thing that people will, I think, do. But maybe that spaceship's a university, maybe it's where you re-educate. You finish one part of your life, re-educate, and off you go, and go to another planet and start another life. Who knows?
Wow. Paul, what a fantastic video. I hadn't actually seen that before, and you brought up so many interesting points that we've talked about in the past, and we also share thinking about. But please continue on from where the video stopped.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrew, and thank you, BODW, for inviting me to speak at this great event. Also, thank you for doing the film in London a few weeks ago, which was enjoyable to do. So I'm just going to set the scene for the debate today and just talk about some things that I think have been affecting us this year, particularly in transportation and in people's behaviour, and also about the accelerated sort of innovation that's happened this year because of the pandemic. But also, how do we envisage the future of transport? What is going to change and what is going to stay with us and what is going to revert back to normal. So I'm just going to briefly break it into three areas. We're talking about people, we're going to be talking about planet, and we're going to be talking about connectivity. So just get this going. There we go. As the film just showed, the sort of area that we're working in at PriestmanGoode, just to give you a bit of more background, these are sort of the projects we're working in, including, of course, the Hong Kong Metro, working with Andrew, and the New Tube for London, Hyperloop, which everybody I'm sure is knowing about. And then thinking about how we can reduce the impact on the planet through changing lifestyles of people ordering food online. How can we design the packaging to have less waste and impact on the environment? And even looking at how people are changing in their lifestyle of living with a project in India, how people are living differently in different groups and individually. And also in the center at the top there, obviously there's new Air France, super luxury environments for people traveling. So, the first area is the human-centric, and to design, of course, you first have to understand. Then you have to really think about how people react to the environments you're designing for, and it's all around designing for people. And looking to the future, and this is something we do all the time. And here are some examples of some of the work. The top right is a thought that we had of if people are social distancing on metros and trains, and seats have to be kept vacant, then how can we use that space usefully? And here we're using bicycles so that people can travel into the centre of the city and then use that form of transport to navigate the city. And then there's super luxury sort of long distance travel. And I know Arnaud is going to be talking about this after me, but this area of is it freight, is it people, but long distance travel, an alternative to traveling by air. And then the bottom right is an interesting trend that's been happening in Europe, which is the growth of night travel by train, sleeper trains. And this is some work we've been doing at Austrian Railways, OBB, and looking at the old four-person bunk bed couchette that I'm sure people are familiar with, and breaking that up into smaller pods. And this was some work we did last year, but obviously very relevant today because it is a sort of individual sleeping areas rather than shared sleeping areas. This statistic I find really interesting. It's 1.5 million. That's how many deliveries there are in New York every day. And that was before the pandemic. So given the trends, it must be much more than this. And I think people often think about congestion in cities being cars with people in them, but actually deliveries. And I think this is something we're really going to have to tackle because this isn't going to go away. This is a massive shift in the way people purchase and shop. So I think there are different ways of doing that. And here, this is a little idea, a little drawing of an idea that I had, which is thinking about, is there a way that we could use the metro system for freight? Most metro systems in cities and towns actually stretch out to the harbours and the airports and the mainline stations. So how about putting the goods onto these metro systems, and maybe in special vehicles or at night, and then taken to a metro station, they pop up, and then they're delivered locally. So community delivery is sort of a kilometre around the metro station. And then the metro stations could become the hearts of neighbourhoods. It's almost like the town square where people go and pick up goods, pop up shops, packaging can return to the factories. And it's a different way of reusing the stuff that we've already built, because I think that's the way forward. We can't just keep on building new stuff, particularly in congested cities. So we've got to reinvent and rethink the way that the infrastructure we already have is used in a different way. And this has to be something that is addressed, because if there's less people traveling on the metro systems, if there's less of a rush hour, which I think would be fantastic, what are we going to do with what we've built? And so the next one is I'm going to be talking about the planet and the environment. And of course, the environment is not just to do with, it's not a sort of buzzword, it's something that we really have to think about. And here is just some images of along the top of cities before COVID, and then along the bottom of what's happened to many cities. And if you look at Paris or even London or New York, where the governments and local authorities are starting to think about cycling and walking as part of the infrastructure. And normally, previously I'd say that cycling was always seen as a bit of a marginal activity, but really embracing that with the benefit of health, reducing pollution, reclaiming the streets. That top left-hand picture of masses of cars with people crammed squeezed to the edges of streets, and then you look at the below pictures. What a transformation! Because we have to do something about pollution in cities, of course. And then thinking about the environment. This is a project that we were looking at about the wastage in travel on trains, on aeroplanes. Every time you're served a piece of food or you have a cup of coffee or tea, there's all this plastic packaging. It's wastage. It's just sort of consumed materials. So this project was looking at how we could reduce that and even stop the wastage in travel using recycled materials, but also materials you can reuse and can clean, even some of the packaging you can eat. So it's sort of as a research project looking at that. And that's a big issue in transportation, minimizing that sort of thing. This is a project that PriestmanGoode have been doing on a yearly basis with the Royal College of Art. And we set a brief to the students every year. And this year we asked them to look at materials for luxury travel, and from the environmental point of view. And one of the entries, this winning entry, was a fantastic piece of work looking at algae, sort of a very common chemical and organism on the planet, but it has some amazing properties, colors, and some of the sort of the interesting textures and surfaces. So a great piece of thinking. And what we're trying to do here is encourage young designers to engage in transportation design and get interested in that area, and hopefully come up with some innovations. And then finishing off, I'm going to talk about connectivity. And I think this is a really big area for many of the transportation companies, because they are having to go digital. A journey now starts from home or from wherever you're about to travel from. It's not when you get to the station. It's not when you get to the airport. So how do their brands connect with people? Because there is so much competition now. If you think about the various sort of taxi on demand apps that you get, are very, very sophisticated. And then you have a metro system, a local city's brand. How does that communicate digitally? And I think that's a real big issue that a lot of the transportation networks have to tackle, because there's an awful lot of competition and doing it very well out there. And on screen, you can just see some work that we've been doing on looking at the customer journey through an airport to ease the journey through an airport. And this is looking at particularly the area that everybody hates, which is security and those points that stop you on your journey. And this is trying to ease that in a contactless journey. And I think this is really key to design of these big sort of airports and stations, to how to make that journey secure, make people feel safe, but also seamless and enjoyable, because we've got to bring that enjoyment back into travel, I think. So just to finish off then, I was leave you with two thoughts. I think the importance of collaboration in innovation is absolutely critical. That's my first point. And the second one, I would say working together produces great and better results. So thank you very much, and thank you BODW, and thank you Andrew, and back to you.
Thank you, Paul. That's a fantastic presentation and video. Really appreciate it. What I love about your work, and I think the work of a lot of designers, is that we're optimists. We believe that we are going to build a better future. And COVID has really given us an opportunity to do that. Many people have told me it's accelerating the future. Work from home was already an ability to do that. But many of us, myself included, had never actually tried it until we were forced to try it. And we then had to do it. A lot of your work is actually in the luxury side of things. My business, of course, is much more in the mass transit side of things. But I think the one thing we do share is a common passion that good design matters to everybody. And I think that's really, really important. So thank you, Paul. We'll continue the conversation at the end of the session. But right now, I'd like to turn to Arnaud Champenois. Arnaud is the Vice President, Brand and Marketing of Belmond. And that's a luxury group. I must admit, I wasn't very familiar with the Belmond name, but I am familiar with the Orient Express. And this is one of many properties that the Belmond group has, which really elevates travel to a destination itself. We talk about the journey is more important than arriving. And really, the collection that you have, Arnaud, takes that. I want to go there. I want to be there. I want to be in a lot of your properties. Thank you very much for joining us from London today, and over to you.
Thank you for having me. And as Paul just said, I think we need to bring back that enjoyment into travel. And I think it's beautiful to think about how we bring back the magic. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very delighted to be here. I wish I would be in Hong Kong. I've been living 7 years in Asia, so I'm very familiar with the region. And I was based in Singapore, but I've been to Hong Kong so many times. And it's very much a city I like. I hope you are staying safe and keeping well where you are. And I'm very thrilled to be here at Business of Design Week in Hong Kong. So today I want to tell you a bit more about Belmond as a travel brand. We are definitely a heritage brand, extremely rich in culture. And what is interesting with the brand is that we've always tried to push boundaries in luxury travel. And why? Because at the beginning of our origins, we had this pioneering spirit from 76, we have expanded our experience offering over 6 decades. But somehow this pioneering spirit was in our DNA, and we were the first brand to operate, in Myanmar, in Botswana. We were the first luxury operator to go to Peru, and now we have 46 properties extend across land, water, adventure, relaxation in 24 different countries around the world. So from here you can see some pretty pictures of our portfolio. But of course, we have iconic heritage properties, and here you can see a picture of the legendary train, the Orient Express, which is definitely iconic for us, and the Cipriani as well. What is interesting is we have one-of-a-kind properties around the world in exceptional locations, steeped in history, and with remarkable stories to tell. as the world is evolving, the world began to pivot to from luxury goods to luxury experiences, and LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet & Cie, noticed us, and we officially joined the LVMH group, the world's leading luxury group, in 2019, alongside Louis Vuitton, Dior, and Moet & Cie. I think what I want to share today with you is the essence of the Belmond brand. How we have many, many different types of property. Each property has a story to tell, singular properties, unique personalities. But at the same time, the essence of Belmond, we have red threads. And in our eclectic portfolio, you can see that all our properties are timeless, authentic retreat. They are rich in culture, they are connected to nature, they are intimate in size, and we offer incomparable genuine travel, which is very, very special to the world of travel. Above all, craftsmanship and design, and that's why we're here today. We're here to talk about design. It's really at the heart of our brand. And I think good design defines authentic experiences. So what is interesting here is you can see on the picture how we really try to encapsulate the essence of our destination, the culture, the local materials, and the magnificent, remarkable locations we are in to kind of create that magic of travel. Here you can see also pictures of our heritage shrines and buildings, and which are almost like museum, showcasing ancient craft when you are really in those incredible assets we have. Can you still hear me?
Yes, fine.
I can't move the slides anymore. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. We're on the time. This is about
The
storage
slides
slide.
are not moving anymore.
Okay, we've got the video going. No, it stopped.
Ah. Hello?
Okay, I think we've got a bit of a technical problem there. We back, Arnaud?
Yeah, I'm
Oh,
back.
there you
I
are.
think,
Always, whenever you
was,
interrupt and say, I've got a technical problem, it all gets fixed. It's an amazing fixer. Okay, back to you.
Okay, cool. So I think here what I was saying earlier is that, we always try to look ahead of the future of travel, and we have a particular responsibility today to preserve and to protect our incredible assets and our unique cultures around the world. And I think what is important as a heritage brand like Belmond, we appreciate the importance of looking back to the past, but to really learn from the past, but to drive that towards the future. So this is exactly what we want to do today when we talk about contemporary nostalgia and heritage preservation. So we have 4 guiding principles, which is extremely important for us. Timeless, understated, genuine, and inspiring. And this is really how we think when we create new design and new travel experiences around the world. So first of all, timeless. It's all about stories. We have incredible stories to tell across the world of Belmond. Here you can see the Grand Suite of the Orient Express. But all our stories are mythical. They are really almost legends, the Cipriani, where Casanova was meeting his lovers. Here, the Orient Express, really, really inspired Agatha Christie. But around the world of Belmond, we have these incredible legends. Here you can see the suite of the Orient Express. We launched 3 suites in 2018 with big success. And we are going to launch new suites in 2021 called Budapest, Prague, and Vienna, inspired by the locations. So what is important also today is that there is a very strong trend on slow travel. And we see a growing appreciation amongst our customers to really connect to the destination and to those slow travel experiences. And this is exactly what I call contemporary nostalgia. And I think today, somehow super trains like the Orient Express are somehow the new private plane. You can see here on the screen a little video of how we make people travel with our trains. So Inspiring is about places, for sure, and we have remarkable places to explore in the world. We definitely think that connecting to nature and to our natural heritage is extremely important for us. As you can see, Eagle Island Lodge, which is one of our lodge in Botswana, that we completely refurbished and revamped in 2018, and it was extremely important for us to make it sustainable. So that's why we, remove all the concrete. We really worked with eco-friendly composite bamboo decking. We put solar panel, now powering 95% of the electricity on site. And above all, we work with local artisans. We really wanted to have the local materials. We wanted to get the furniture from the region. We actually even produce crafted pieces with the Blind Society of South Africa. So we always think about pushing boundaries and sustainable design when it comes to traveling with Belmond. Understated is all about details, and I would love to quote Hubert de Givenchy. He said, "Luxury is in each detail." When you walk in a Belmond property, you can feel the soul and the heart of the brand. And here you can see a great picture of a property we are relaunching in March 2021. We work with Fessin Architects. They are French-based, and we really try to mix the inspiration from the local village of Portofino, and to really make sure that it was still contemporary and with the inspiration of mid-century modern design, and to really get this incredible, relaxed sophistication atmosphere. And finally, genuine. It's all about people. The warmth and the personality of our staff is quite famous around the world at Belmond. But it's also how we work with interior designer, and we have this global network of brand ambassador. Here you can see a picture of Matthew Williamson. He really captured the artistic vibe of Deya, and we've done with him a designer suite. And I can tell you, when you enter into that suite, you exactly know where you are in the world, because you really capture the artistic vibe, the colorful quirkiness of the destination, which is also very important for us when it comes to capture the genuineness of our destination. So as a conclusion, I think we need to look at the future, and we need to really invest into the creative talent of tomorrow. For the past 3 years, we've been partnering with new designers in London here, which is one of the most famous graduate design shows. And what is important for us is to champion emerging talent, to really look at the craft makers and the designers of tomorrow, and to ensure that our history and their new skills, we will be able to create the future of travel for years to come. Because we need to shape this future of travel, and we need to transform also the industries beyond us. So in a conclusion, as we look towards the future, and it's important for us to make sure that as a luxury brand, we have an opportunity and a responsibility to take our role as leaders in luxury. We are custodians of world precious heritage, but at the same time, we build the heritage of the future. And this is really what I'd like to say today. We look forward to sharing more details with you on our initiatives around the world at Belmond as we continue to reinvent the future of travel. So more time.
Thank you, Arnaud. That was really insightful, really interesting. I love the fact about the issue about heritage. You're obviously running a lot of heritage properties there. Even within MTR, we're a 40-plus-year-old railway, and I often say that it's really important we respect the heritage of our railway, of the original designers, and then we still build upon that and build that legacy on. Anyway, keeping on with the time, I'd now like to introduce Lars Herold. Lars is the CEO and co-founder, there he is, of Dromos. And Dromos is one of the technologies that is bringing together a lot of different things together in one particular solution for high-capacity transit of the future. Really, I think, for all the things that I've been hearing in today's conference, many people talking about little pieces, Dromos really brings them all together in one particular offer. Lars has got 20-odd years' experience working over 50 cities, I read this morning, a real transit professional and a real advocate for the future of transit. Rather than listen to me, please, Lars, over to you.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and it's a pleasure to be here. We've heard a lot about the high end of travel from Paul and also from Belmond. Now I'd like to talk about the other end, which is the reality for a lot of people in cities, and that is mass transportation. So when we look at the world of mass transportation, the reality is often not very glamorous at all. And if you look at it from a standpoint of design, form follows function. But when we look at the design of the urban transport infrastructure and vehicles today, the way we transport passenger and also goods in cities is really dysfunctional. Humanity really does have a fundamental problem with the design of our urban transport systems. So when you look at road congestion, it's a very obvious thing, but also, and I hate to say this, mass transit systems like train systems, like metro systems and light rail systems are far from trouble-free. They're very, very expensive. At least before COVID, they were very, very packed in many cities, and they did not provide a very, very comfortable or convenient experience for most passengers that use them. So at Dromos, we try to solve that fundamentally. And what we're talking about here is a fundamental design shift. We're talking about reinventing a paradigm of design that has been dominating cities since 1863. And for the railway people amongst you, of course, you know that 1863 marked the day, the year when the first urban railway line opened in London. You can see the photo there on the bottom left-hand corner, how that looked like. That is the paradigm that still dominates high-capacity transportation in cities today. So let me explain what that looks like. The journey, as Paul Priestman said, of the user does not start at a train station. It starts at home, where people start their journey from, or from work. So they have to go first to a place called the train station, where they get on a train with thousands of other people. This train then stutters down a line at stops where people do not want to go to. They then go to a destination stop where they also don't want to go to, and then they get off at that destination stop, and then they have to make another trip to somewhere else where they actually want to go. Now, of course, I'm being a little bit cynical here, but that is really not a good user experience. It's fundamentally misaligned with the underlying user need. And we all know when technological revolutions happen, they happen because the outgoing paradigm is fundamentally misaligned with the way the product is designed and the way people really want the product to be and the experience to be. So a railway system, be it a light rail system, be it a metro system, or if we look at a bus rapid transit system, takes up a lot of space. The corridors are typically 12 to 15 meter wide. They use massive vehicles to transport people. You've got every kilometer or so, you've got a stop. In the case of MTR, for example, a stop is usually about 12,000 square meters when you add up all the space. So they're not space efficient at all. They take actually up a lot of space in cities. and provide, I would say, not the best user experience. The way we have thought about this at Dromos is turning this whole principle on its head, to go really from bundling and aggregation to a fast drip feed model. The first thing that we do is we right-size the vehicle. So the reality is that in urban transport, the average party travel size is 1.2, which means in 80% of the cases, it's only a single person traveling. It's not two people, not a family with kids. We, of course, have to accommodate those passengers, but the fundamental task at hand is one person, and one person only. So we've designed a vehicle that can accommodate one person very, very comfortable and luxuriously, in fact. But of course, we can accommodate 2 adults and 2 kids, even 4 adults by today's public transport standards in one vehicle. And this vehicle is 1 meter wide. It runs on 1.4 meter wide infrastructure on which we operate in very fast drip feed, and we can transport on this 1.5 meter wide infrastructure about 10,000 people per hour. Where we need more capacity than that, we can have 2, 3, 4 or more of these Dromos lanes next to each other or on top of each other. So that gives us the ability to scale up and down the capacity required in this system with a lot less infrastructure, a lot more lightweight vehicles, and a lot simpler and faster to build technology, with less intervention in the urban space. In fact, when you add it up, and calculate for a couple of applications. We've done that with real cities where you add up all the space that's required, including all the acceleration, deceleration, stopping bays, trunk, all the space added up is still less than half of what you require in a railway system. So in a nutshell, what we call this type of transport mode autonomous network transit. So this is a high capacity system. So this is not designed for last mile or first mile or low capacity. It's not a robotaxi. It's not a shared minibus vehicle, not at all. Each travel party travels in their own vehicle. It's a high capacity system for passenger, but also freight. Because one of the other problems that Paul Priestman very rightly raised is that with rail or BRT systems, bus rapid transit, we're using a hell of a lot of space and infrastructure, but we can really not transport freight very efficiently. With the Dromos system, we can use the off-peak times to transport freight. So that's parcel delivery and full service, 2 pallet size per vehicle type of cargo, direct to dock, direct to shops. And so we can use our Dromos infrastructure both for the passenger and for the freight task. In terms of cost, Dromos systems typically cost half to build and to operate compared to rail-based or bus-based systems. So they are a much better value proposition for cities, which also enables the private sector to fully fund and operate those systems, which is another big problem with public transport today that most people aren't aware of. And that is that transport systems today are highly subsidized, in particular in terms of the capital cost. So in a nutshell, in terms of the design principles that we're talking about, the system is on demand. It's fully autonomous, it's electric. We operate on dedicated infrastructure, so we do not share our traffic space with normal roads or with pedestrians or cyclists. So this is like a rail system, a dedicated system, but it takes up half the space. All the stops are offline, so we never stop the traffic flow on our trunk lines. So when you add that together, from a city perspective and from a customer perspective, it's a unique and compelling value proposition. First of all, in terms of safe design, it is a highly safe system. In fact, we believe it will be factor 5 to 10 safer than today's rail-based system. It also has the highest level of convenience, and that's one of the discussion points of this panel today as well, that we have to ask ourselves, how can we make mass transportation more convenient? Because it is not convenient today, if we're really honest with ourselves. Of course, I'm not sure we will reach in mass transit all the luxurious heights of the first class seats and the Orient Express, but in a second I'm going to show you some of the designs for our vehicle that we've developed with PriestmanGoode. you will see that it's a hell of a better experience than provided today in metro systems or in bus systems. So here you see some of the designs for our passenger vehicles in operation. You can see that there. So you can see there are 3 trunk lines that can transport 20,000 people per direction per hour. And on the left-hand side, you can see a stop type of setup where we've got. You can see these vehicles. They're beautifully designed by Paul and his team. They've got a lot of interesting features in terms of the interior when you look at that. So you've got a seating bench there that, as I mentioned, can comfortably seat 2 adults on either side of the vehicle. There's ample space for luggage, like, for example, in airport applications where you've got a family, for example, entering this vehicle with their luggage. And, of course, there's other designs in terms of, here you see a special vehicle for extra-sized luggage cases, for example. But we also get requests from cities for sporting equipment. In this case, you see the bicycle, which is also one of the design concepts that Paul has shown in his train designs, and the team has designed that here in our vehicle. Of course, this could be a surfboard. If we're going to Australia, for example, we would have a surfboard there, or if it's in Switzerland or Austria, you might have skis in there. There's many different applications and interior designs. Freight is another big problem, and I would really like to drive this point home because as of today, only 1/3 or about 1/3 of the mileage, the transport mileage in cities is freight, and 70% is passenger. But by 2030, we have a situation where we will transport 50-50 passengers and freight. So that means it is really almost nonsensical for cities to invest billions and billions of dollars in rail or bus rapid transit-based infrastructure that can only transport the passenger task, and it cannot deal with the freight task effectively, even though there are good design ideas on try to use metro systems for freight. But Paul, in all honesty, we have seen a lot of those design ideas in the last 2 decades, or even before that, and we have not seen a single successful application of using metro systems effectively for freight. So I'm going to be a little bit on the skeptical side there and say that fundamentally the way rail systems operate, it's going to be difficult to use freight effectively. So with our system, of course, we're a lot more flexible with these vehicles. So in the design you see there on the screen, that's one design option there. There's other design options where we have 2 full-size pallets that can be transported, and these vehicles can go directly to shops, for example, so you have a direct-to-dock service. Moving on, there's also, of course, another freight problem, that's package delivery and also letter delivery, and there's a hybrid solution here that we can deploy, for example, where postal delivery staff can use our vehicles to transport parcels, letters, and so forth. So in a nutshell, to wrap this up, and I'm sure we're going to have a nice and interesting discussion about this, what we really see here is that the world is on the cusp of a major paradigm shift. We see the 150-year-old paradigm of bundling and aggregation coming to an end. We're seeing a world where a lot of things are shifting. It's really a tectonic shift for mass transportation. So we're going from systems that are highly government subsidized and large vehicles to small vehicles that are nimble. We're going from dedicated lines built for 100,000 people an hour to a more smaller autonomous mesh configuration where you have smaller lines, maybe 10, 20, 30,000 people per hour, and the network branching out a lot more and going much closer to the user. So that's just a snapshot. Happy to discuss this further, but we're very excited about this paradigm shift that's coming. And we're ready to take on light rail, metro, and bus rapid transit.
Thank you, Lars. That's really interesting. Like I said earlier, I just love designers' ability to think that the future is going to be so brilliant. And Lars every time I hear you speak, you've got such a rosy view of what the future is going to be. Maybe I'll start with the first question to you then. In which city am I going to be able to ride a drone? How long do I have to wait for the future to arrive?
Well, we're actually pretty gearing up to getting ready to build the first system. We already have a demonstration track on our own campus in Munich, and we've got several cities in discussions. So we're currently planning for opening the first system in 2023-24. So we'll be looking at that. We'll have smaller applications at an earlier time. So the vehicle is under full development as we speak. So next year we will be able to take people around in our vehicle. The first step for us is really tackling those systems in the 5,000 to 20,000 people per hour type of range. And we definitely see that happening in the 23-24 time window. Okay,
I can't wait. I wonder if I can bring Paul and Arnaud back into the discussion. There you are, there's Paul. Paul, I started out the discussion saying how COVID has accelerated us into the future. As you talked in your talk and in your video, you say you spent the last 20, 30 years thinking about the future. Of all the things that you've seen, and maybe something that Lars or even Arnaud's talked about, what do you think is the thing most likely to happen when we finally get out of this pandemic and then start to travel again? What do you think is really going to change most of all? The near future, not the far future.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that you're following on from what Lars was saying, I think the thing that is staring us in the face is that people used to travel to go shopping, didn't they? They used to go on the transport system to go shopping. But now the shops are coming to the customer when they book online or shop online. And I think we can't ignore that trend, which I think is going to stay. Of course, people will go shopping for small, luxury goods or sort of recreational shopping. But I think, that is a massive shift for cities. And also the fact that I think that the cities are going to be used in a different way. And, the centre of cities may become more residential. So there are some really interesting things. But I mean, I think picking up on what Arnaud was saying, is that, there is that sense of place, and people really enjoy a different experience. They don't want sort of an international experience if they go to a city. So public transport needs to reflect where they are, and that's one of the lovely things. And then the other thing I think that Arnaud said, which I think was really interesting, is what's the rush? If we're all being able to work from home and work from cafes and there's no rush hour, then you don't have to rush to anywhere. You can work as you travel. And I think that's going to be the next thing, is that the 9 to 5 is maybe disappearing, and people are able to work and do whatever they're doing as they go about traveling. So travel becomes almost like a byproduct.
Okay, well, talking of rushing, I have to rush now because we've run actually out of time. So I didn't get to ask any further questions, but thank you all very much. I really enjoyed discussions today, learning from all three of you, and thanks to everybody here in the studio, and back over to you, BODW. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, as well as our speakers for the wonderful exchanges. And I see that a common keyword I'm hearing here from our designers is optimism and a very positive prospect looking into our future. And I think that's really what a great design is about, building a better future for us. And well, once again, thank you very much, Andrew.